Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies Podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
At the root of all of our societal causes is going to be an instability for kids. And if you create an unstable environment for kids, you're going to get children in prison and you're going to get adults in prison. And if you create an unstable environment for kids, you're going to find homeless adults. And if you create unstable environment for kids, you're going to have substance abuse as adults. And in the converse, if you can create stable environments and safe places for kids, you're going to create environments where adults can thrive and be healthy, and they can thrive and be healthy and take care of stable environments for their kids.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia Larson, and I'm a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA.
Hi there, this is Jake Eberly, the producer of the Bonus Babies podcast. And today, Jayne speaks with Hank Fortener. And Hank has a giant family because his parents felt it was their duty and it was their desire to help as many kids as possible. So throughout his youth, he had many kids in and out of the house that his parents were taking in for short periods and even long periods of time, some being fostered and some being adopted. He's also the co-founder of AdoptTogether, the world's largest nonprofit crowdfunding platform for adoption, dedicated to a world with no more orphans. They imagine a world where orphanages and foster care systems are things of the past because the community is actually taking care of the kids. A family for every child, one child at a time. In the past 10 years, they've helped over 5,000 families adopt by raising over $28 million to support them. Enjoy the episode.
Hi, I'm here with Hank Fortener. Hank, thank you. Thank you. You answered me via LinkedIn, and here we are a few days later, and you're on my podcast. Hi.
That's it. Hello. Thank you for having me. Look at the powers of LinkedIn coming at us right now.
I can't believe it because I don't even know who uses it. I mean, a lot of people don't even look at it for months.
Oh, I love LinkedIn. I think it's like a Facebook for adults is how it was once described to me. And I'm on calls with people at work. I'm on calls, while I'm on a call, I'm LinkedIn stalking people
Oh,
regularly.
really?
Oh yeah.
I should try that.
Yeah, it's great. And if you're ever like, you have an idea, you're sitting in a meeting thinking about something, this is
Yeah.
my low key free plug for LinkedIn to sponsor your
Yeah, I was
podcast.
going to say, I don't want to plug them too hard, but anyway, go ahead.
You're in a meeting and you're like, wouldn't it be cool if silly story. We had this idea for this company, this grocery store in Los Angeles called Northgate Markets. I'm like, how do I get a hold of Northgate Markets? Well, you do a search and I find out like I got 5 friends who work at Northgate Markets. I was like, well, that worked out. So
Your
it
connections, yeah, right.
yeah, it worked out great. So LinkedIn is bringing people together.
That's really cool. So anyway, thank you. And so can you tell me a little bit about who you are, how you're raised, where you're from, what's the skinny home life, you know?
Sure, that's a big question for me. I was raised in a state certified foster home in Dayton, Ohio. We lived on a street called Locust Hill Road, and my mom and dad had 3 of us biologically, and then my mom said that God put her on earth to be a mother. Pregnancy was super hard for her, so the doctor said, "Hey, we should tie your tubes. This should be your last pregnancy. I don't know that it's healthy for you to keep going." And my mom was only 26 at the time, so for pregnancy to be that hard at that age, there was some heavy health concerns. And she said she sobbed on the operating table when she woke up and just told my dad, "I've made a huge mistake. I've ruined my life. This is what I was made to do was be a mom."
Wow,
And
really?
my dad had like 3 years earlier found out that his dad was adopted. So it like popped into his mind. He said, my dad was 26. My dad was like, what do I do with a crying wife who's in recovery? I have 3 kids. And he just said, well, we can adopt. So my mom was like, okay, okay. And that calmed her down. And that was where adoption sort of entered our family. My mom sat us down and said, we're going to be foster parents. And we were all homeschooled because my mom did not believe in schooling. She did not believe in the way that the systems teach kids how to learn. She didn't like how the systems taught kids how to be crowd controlled. She did lots of things. We could do a whole podcast on that. I'll leave that one alone.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, I bet, uh-huh.
Moral of the story is she said that school is mostly brainwashing and crowd control, and she wanted to keep brainwashing in the privacy of her own home. So we stayed home, became foster parents, and over the next 7 years, fostered 36 kids
Wow,
from different
36.
backgrounds, different ethnicities, different special needs care. She had one rule, which was I don't want you to call me first. I want you to call me once. If you have a kid that you can't place anywhere. So we had kids who had severe special needs, severe medical needs, and that was our home life. That was our normal. Was there's a someone new at the breakfast table when I come down in the morning.
Right, so how did you handle that? How was it f for you?
It was just life. People used to ask us as we got older, like, do you ever feel like your parents, didn't give you enough attention? Well, I used to look at people who are only children, and I know there's some only children listening. No offense, but I would look at people who are only children and be like, how dull must their day be? Like, not their life, not their whole life, because they would go on like planes for vacation because there's only one of them.
Right.
But I would be like, what do they do in the morning? Like when you wake up, it's just like you and your parents. Like, do people just. So it was controlled chaos. It was organized chaos. It was an adventure. I only saw it as an adventure. And that's not me, I don't think. And I've
And
talked
you're
to a
not
lot of therapists.
sugarcoating, right? You're
Yeah,
not
I don't think
sugarcoating
that. I
this,
mean,
yeah.
I've checked it with a lot of therapists. I'm not repressing anything. I genuinely, it was an adventure. It was life. It was amazing. The hardest part of it was when the kids would leave,
Yeah, that's what I wanna
and
ask
they
you
didn't.
about, yeah.
I said that wrong. The hardest part is when the kids were taken. No kid chose to leave our family, and when you're 7 and 9 and 12, you don't know how to cuss and you don't know how to rage. But when a social worker takes your little brother and makes no attempt to explain it to you, and your parents are young and they don't have the material to explain it to you, and there's also like you also feel dumb because you're like, yeah, this was foster care. It wasn't my family, not my blood. We were not adopted. When your brother is taken in front of your eyes and you can do nothing, that I've talked to a lot of therapists about.
And you're
That's
talking about, hubby right now, right?
hubby, Elizabeth, and Bubba were three kids that probably were the most traumatic for us because they stayed with us for so long.
Mhm. They become
Um,
part of your family, yeah.
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 No, you're a kid. You just don't know any different. This is okay. I have these two brothers and this one, and I got this brother and this brother. And you just the way my parents led our family was everybody get in the car, everybody go to bed. There was no separation of what a foster kid or a bio kid or an adopted kid. My parents were, you are inside of these four walls. You don't get to do that to him. You get to sit here. There was no hierarchy. We were a family.
Well, that's the way it should be, Hank, but very often in families that foster kids, it's not that way.
Hmm.
There is often great disparity. The bio kids are treated way better than the foster kids or even the adopted kids.
Mm.
So I think your family sounds just really special. I hope there's many more out there. I do talk to a lot of foster parents. I know there's a lot of great ones out there, but gosh, I wish that we could just clone what happened in your house.
And I think it's happening all over the world. That's the beauty of. So what I get to do now, which I know we'll get to at some point, um, there are thousands and thousands of families like my mom and dad who are raising kids they did not give birth to, and they are raising them like they are, uh, you know, Pharaoh's daughter who got to take care of Moses out of the river. I mean, we are talking some of the most incredible families in the world. When we do our events, I always sort of tease these other big galas and organizations out there who call their donors angels. A donor's not an angel. A
No.
donor is like they wrote a check,
They
and
wrote a check,
you know
yeah.
what? And we need them, and we love
Mhm.
them, and
Very important. Mhm.
inviting you to our baby ball, which is October 15th in Los Angeles. But
Baby ball, October 15th. Okay.
you wrote the check, and even the people who wrote the check kind of feel weird. They're like, "I'm not the angel." No, the angel are the families who make a lifelong commitment to a child to come into their family, who are like Anne and Chuck Fortner, and there are thousands of them. And I mean, I have met them in Phoenix and Colorado and New York, Canada. I've met them in Australia, asking us to expand to Australia. They're all over the world, Jane. And it's just so fun to know that that's happening. That's not the story you hear of adoption, and those are not the stories that often gets popularized. But there's some incredible, unbelievable parents that are probably even listening to your podcast who have that like fast beat in their chest. Like, man, I knew my house had room for one more baby. And they're out there and they're doing incredible work, and they know each other and they get together for picnics. When I was first starting, you know, to discover what the world my family was a part of, because it was just normal for us. And then I was like, oh, we're a part of like an adoption community. I started to realize we had a group of people who adopted kids from the Marshall Islands, and we would go to a park every 6 months or once a year, and you'd meet all of these families who had adopted from the Marshall Islands, and all these Marshallese kids would meet each other, and there'd be cultural things. Then we'd go to another park, and it would be like all the people who had adopted kids from Bolivia, and it's all these Bolivian kids and these families who are integrating their culture as best as they know how. And then there's all these people who had mothers who have adopted from China who gathered together. They're out there, Jane, and they're quiet, and they are powerful, and they're the incredible people that I get to fight for with Adopt Together every day.
You know, you're filling me with so much hope. It's just wonderful to hear. I've heard about the work that you do, and then to be able to hear it from you, um, and to hear your passion, and to hear the amount of integrity that is, and the focus and the discipline, and I don't know, ongoing commitment, right? Because it's got to be hard. It's not like you just do it once and like, wow, I did it, great,
Right.
great effect.
Yeah.
No, you're
We're
you're
10 and a half years in.
right. So this is Adopt Together. So let's talk about that,
Yes,
because
ma'am. So I
that's
called my dad in, or no, rather, my dad called me. I had moved to Los Angeles, so I lived far away, and we were kind of checking in. And he called me and said, "Your mom and I want to start a foundation. We want to, he had exited his company and kind of wanted to continue the work of adoption, but they were too old. You hit a certain age, and there's countries, cities, counties, they really won't let you adopt if you're going to be 40 years older than your child. So he said, we're not allowed to adopt anymore. So we want to help families adopt. I said, okay, cool. So I started connecting him with families and helping them fund it, because the number one reason I realized is that families don't adopt because it's expensive. And if
right. So
you,
give me an idea of how expensive, because I don't think people they don't know how truly expensive it is.
I'm going to oversimplify it by saying the average is $50,000
Right.
per adoption.
Right.
Now, there's people listening who would say, well, we adopted from sub-Saharan Africa and it was $90,000. And there's people who had adopted in their own local municipality, and they'll say it was free. So there's a broad range. I want to be really fair. But the average adoption, if you do what's called mother's choice, which is a pregnant mother chooses you from a profile and chooses you so that their child has a family at birth, or if you do an international adoption, or if you do even a private adoption, or if you adopt from foster care, you're going to be in a range of funds that end up being kind of overwhelming. For if you are making a good salary, which is 50 to 75 to $100,000 a year, but you're staring down the barrel of a 50 to $75,000 bill, you're like, I don't know if we're equipped for that as a family. I don't know if we're ready for that.
Right.
Mind
And
you, if you have a child and you go to a hospital, insurance covers those fees.
insurance covers it, right?
My
But not
daughter was
adoption.
born. My biological daughter was born at Cedar Sinai Hospital here in Los Angeles. She was in the ICU for a week. My wife was in the ICU with monster complications. We went back and forth to the hospital multiple times. My bill was over $100,000, and I paid a $300 deductible. So
Wow.
you got to think about the fact that if they had said, "Hey, you can have your daughter, you can take her home, but it's going to be 100 grand," man, I'm gonna have to pull levers. I thought I was gonna have to sell everything I owned to bring my daughter home, right? And that's kind of the way that the system is set up. It's not. I don't want to mean to demonize it. It's just the way that it's set up. In order to get to your child, there's a financial burden to cover. So we do our best, um, and did my best with my dad to like just kind of connect families to my dad. Get a little hump. You don't. You just need a little help over that first hump. You don't need the whole amount of money. You don't. You can afford to raise a child. You can even afford some expenses, but sometimes you need some support along the way. A, to take the the scaries out of it, but two, also just to help you get that momentum going. So I called my dad a couple of families in where he was like, okay, this is not sustainable for me to fund your friend's adoptions. I said, hey, let's create a profile and a website that helps families fund adoption. There was a small micro lending website out there called Kiva, and it was the way that people were micro lending in early 2000s. And I said, let's create that, but let's do it just straight donations, but let's make it tax deductible. Well, my dad, as luck would have it, or as God would have it, is a database engineer with a programming background, and he can write software, and he was a CPA. So you imagine that, like, if God was like, I'm going to give this kid with an idea a dad who happens to have all the skills necessary.
To
Sure,
execute it, right,
to execute. I mean, I couldn't execute. I was 20. I was a 25-year-old pastor or something, and I was like, "Hey, I got an idea." I didn't know anything about the marketplace. I didn't know how to raise money. I didn't know how to make a website. I knew nothing. And my dad was like, "Yeah, okay." One conversation, he comes back with wireframes and said, "This is what we can build." Mind you, GoFundMe, none of that was available. None of that was out yet. Kickstarter, none of that existed yet. Crowdfunding was a new concept that Kiva sort of introduced to the world at large. And I just brought it to my dad. He said, let's do it. I found a guy at my church. I was a pastor. I found a guy at my church who built websites. I said, hey, I got an idea. Can you teach me how to build websites? And he's like, sure. And we sat down. He said, you will never learn how to build websites, so I'll build it for you. After 45 minutes, I didn't even understand the framework of a website. So he said, you're going to need me to do this for you. And we launched in 2010 at my 30th, or 2012 at my 30th birthday party. And since then, we've had over 5,000 families join the profile, and we've raised a little over $30 million to help families bring their babies home.
Holy moly.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's been
Wow.
amazing. Been amazing.
Amazing.
And we've done it with contractors, and we've done it. My dad has a day job. I have a day job and a half. All of our programmers and developers, and it's been a warrior like group of volunteers who have made this possible. It's been an incredible group of those people I mentioned who write checks to make it possible. It's been just an unbelievable outpouring of people who, the old phrase that many hands makes light work. That's how we put this platform out to the world, and there for all those incredible families like my mom and dad who wish they had a platform like this. We do everything we can every single day to make sure it's possible.
So I want to go back to something because you kind of skipped over it, but you were a pastor and you were a very young pastor.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me about that? What brought you to that?
Yeah, I had a religious experience, spiritual experience, through a group called Young Life in Centerville, Ohio. I had a mentor named Eric Hoffman who explained God to me in the most profoundly simple way. And I would say I was always a spiritual kid. At 8 years old, I remember praying and talking to God. And my parents were explorers and would go to all these different churches. And I heard a lot. I had a lot of input. I didn't start from zero, but I had a conversation with God all the time in my life. Had a spiritual experience at Katie Finn's basement in Centerville, Ohio. Eric Hoffman was the leader of that Young Life group there, and I thought, man, this is going to change my life. I had that feeling. I could picture the carpet that I was sat on and the group of kids, and I just thought, this is going to change my life forever. And I immediately told my parents, I really want to get involved at a church, or I want to go to another church. So we found a church that was had a young pastor at the time. I say young because he was like 35, which now I'm like, oh, wow, I felt like he was ancient, but he was 35. And I started going to the church and taking notes and learning and everything. And he spotted me and sort of started mentoring me and said, "Hey, there's a chance that you could do this too." And I was like, "Oh, whatever God wants me to do. I mean, if there's a God of the universe and he like wants something from me, you can just count my name to be signed on that dotted line."
Right,
And
so it's that you saw it as a calling and not because something that you want to get up in front of people and preach or talk or exchange.
yeah, oh no, I was like invited I don't know how to yeah, I don't think I wanted to do it until I realized that I enjoyed it and people enjoyed when I did it. I think that's the key.
Mm.
Some people
Mhm.
really enjoy playing music or really enjoy speaking or really enjoy I think you find a calling when something you enjoy is also enjoyed by other humans.
Yes.
Some people are like, I love writing. Okay, well, if people don't love reading, you don't have a calling on your hands. You have a hobby. And I have really enjoyed speaking. I enjoyed sharing. I enjoyed telling stories. I enjoyed the research part of it and preparing something that I would share with people. And they really enjoyed that too. So he became my mentor, and he and his wife taught me how to preach, how to craft a talk, they taught me the discipline and the craft of communication. Um, and I did that for a number of years. I started when I was 17, and then I did that in Ohio for 5 years, and I did it in Los Angeles for 10.
And what and why LA? You just wanted to reach out, you wanted to expand, or, you felt that they you were needed here, or
I always had a draw to California. When you're a kid growing up in Ohio, I was actually talking to another guy from Ohio recently about this. When you're a kid from Ohio, California is the promised land.
Yeah, yeah.
There's this old phrase that California in Spanish means paradise.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's true, but I read that in a book when I was 16, and I was like, I'm gonna go to California someday. And as a pastor, I grew up at this church. I started speaking at this church. This church was growing so fast, and it's a very small town. So I felt in some way like I was like a star quarterback that never graduated. Like
Yep.
I had
Mhm.
people who were like, "You're still here? Like, shouldn't you go explore?" And this was the only town I'd ever lived in. It's the only place I'd ever known. And I would travel places and come back and be like, "Huh, it's real quiet here." And everyone is either lives with their parents or has kids. And I was 22, and I was like, I think I need to go like live my life a little bit before I just sort of dig in and think about retirement. And so I did. I went to move to Los Angeles for graduate school. I got a master's degree in theology with an emphasis in storytelling, which was my goal. I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to write stories. I wanted to do movies. I wanted to do something in entertainment. And through the process, I was introduced to the church in Los Angeles that I became a pastor. Just started attending, interning, doing that for free, and then they asked me to speak. And since I loved doing that, and people tended to enjoy when I did it, that became my next decade.
And that was Mosaic, right?
Mhm.
Yes, and is that still in existence and you're
It
just not
is, yeah,
there, or yeah,
yep,
yeah, yeah.
yep,
I love that name, Mosaic.
beautiful.
It means so much, and
Incredible metaphor.
yes,
Incredible metaphor.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you've now, you've connected over 5,000 families with kids, right?
We've helped those 5,000 families who are connected with kids. We've helped them raise their funds.
You've helped them raise their
Yes, ma'am.
funds, and a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars,
That's right.
and right, and how do you feel about what you're doing, Hank?
I it's a conflicted feeling because on the day to day it feels like work. It feels like everything else we do, right? Feels like, oh, I got to get this thing. I feel like this is going to sound um, maybe interesting to hear, but I feel like a dramatic underachiever. I feel like we
Really?
haven't even done nearly enough for the amount of kids that desperately need families. And we haven't done enough to tell the stories. We haven't done enough to support the families. We haven't done enough and I know I have to like mute that voice sometimes. And so on the day to day, it feels like work. When we have moments like Baby Ball, and when we have moments where our donors get together, we just did a golf tournament in Phoenix. And when we have moments where people rally around and they support with their hard earned money and their they're well-earned relationships, and they get around and support. Not they're not supporting me; they're supporting the families. Um, I feel overwhelmed with gratitude. So I would say I live in that conflict of a feeling of overwhelm that I can't do enough, and I feel overwhelmed by how much we've gotten to do together. If that, I know that as a conflict, but it's the one I live in.
Well, we are conflicted beings, so that makes absolute sense. And there are so many kids in need all over the world. There's families in need, and I know firsthand here in Los Angeles, with 35,000 kids in the foster care system, that there's many, many, many kids that want to be adopted who never have that chance, especially the older kids.
Hmm.
They don't
Hmm.
even they don't even have the option.
Yeah, and of those 35,000 kids in our foster care system in Los Angeles, there's only 1,000 those parental rights have been terminated. So there's only 1,000 adoptable kids in that group.
Right,
Average age of those kids is 11.
right.
So you want to talk about if a 25-year-old says we want to adopt to expand our family, your average 25-year-old couple that lives in Los Angeles and one or both of them work is not equipped to handle an 11-year-old child who's endured years and years and years of foster care and the dysfunction and the uncertainty of their youth. And so it is an overwhelming concern, and that's one part of the reason why I'm so passionate about Adopt Together, because if we can fund families and we can give families the resources and give prospective families the confidence that adoption is possible for their family. And then simultaneously, we can tell those stories and give birth moms the confidence that there's families out there that have the resources and they have the confidence and they have the love and they have the stability. They have everything they want their child to have. We can find a place where we can create a future where kids are entering foster care at a lower rate. Kids are in need of foster care at a lower rate. Families are more stable. Families are reunified sooner. That is our overarching vision.
That's a huge goal and a really admirable one. And I hope that people that are listening to this understand um, how truly difficult that is, and yet very doable with if there's people like you out in the world trying to make it happen.
Yeah. And it's not just me. I get to be our spokesperson, but and I've said it a few times. We have a group of people called the family. They give restricted funds every year to cover our overhead. So every time a family raises money, we don't take any of it. That money goes straight back to adoption expenses and resources. So we have this group of people who are dedicated to it. They give to the boring stuff. They give to overhead. They give to audits. They give to lawyers and legal fees and web developers. They give to the boring things so that we have the power and we have the ability and the capacity to give to families and to be able to grant to families. So there are so many people, and here's the thing: we did an audit or a poll a couple of years ago. So let's say this data is a little old. 40,000 donors,
Wow.
40,000 donors logged in, dealt with our growing or getting better website. Our website's the best it's ever been right now, adopttogether.org. I hope people come and look at it because we spent thousands of hours on that thing.
It looks fantastic,
It
and
looks
it'll
great.
be
It's
it'll
the
be in the
best
show
it's ever
notes.
been.
It's really good. It's
I'll
really
be
good.
mad at it in a year. In a year, I'll hate it again, and we'll have to redo it. But for now, I'm very proud of it, and we're so proud of our team. And there are 40,000 people who have donated to those 5,000 families. There's 40 or 50,000 people who have gotten out their credit cards and swiped their cards. Those are the people I'm most impressed by and proud of. Is the people who say, "Yeah, I'm going to root for this family that I maybe know or maybe don't know." And families call us all the time and they say, we're getting donations from people we don't know. Who are these people? And we're like, there's some people who just cruise the site. We see their tax statements and they're like, there's donating to 10 or 12 or 15 families. There's no way they know these people. But they're people that are just rooting for family, and they know that at the root of all of our societal causes is going to be an instability for kids. And if you create an unstable environment for kids, you're going to get children in prison and you're going to get adults in prison. And if you create an unstable environment for kids, you're going to find homeless adults. And if you create unstable environment for kids, you're going to have substance abuse as adults. And in the converse, if you can create stable environments and safe places for kids, you're going to create environments where adults can thrive and be healthy, and they can thrive and be healthy and take care of stable environments for their kids. So you have a factor that I think about a lot, and I think it occurred to me with my parents is when you take care of a child, you have a generational impact. Throughout the scriptures, if your background is spiritual, there's this idea of a generational sin, right? And I think the generational sin is the spiritual or scriptural language for your mistakes will be passed on to your children just like your virtues will, and your fun and your money will, or your debts will. And your mistakes, your dysfunctions will be handed to your kids. But on the flip side is an idea of a generational blessing. When you adopt a child, or you as a person have dysfunctional parents who handed chaos to you, when you upset that and create a stable environment for your children full of love and consistency and character and virtue, you break that cycle of dysfunction and sin, and you bring blessing on your children. And when I think about AdoptTogether, I don't think about 5,000 kids. I think about those 5,000 kids and the 5,000 people that they'll marry, and the 10,000 kids if they each have two kids. And those 10,000 kids will be able to pass stability onto their children. And that'll be 20,000, maybe 40,000. You start to play that out and realize that you're not just taking care of a child, you're upsetting a generational pattern that needed to stop someplace. That I couldn't be more proud of our Adopt Together families, who are those people who raise their hand to say, I'm going to interrupt the cycle for this kid. Can't do
Yes.
it for the world, but I can do
Right.
it for this kid, and this kid's going to interrupt it for his kids, and who will interrupt it for their kids, who will interrupt it for their kids. Because if you can raise great kids, you're really raising great adults who are going to raise great kids. And if you neglect, or if you bring uncertainty, or you bring abuse into the life of a child, you raise an adult who most likely statistically is going to bring those same things into their adulthood on the kids that they interact with. So there's a powerful, long, long, long tail. Long after I'm gone, I found out recently I'm not going to live forever. That was devastating news.
No, really?
But
Ah,
long after
wow.
we're gone, Jane, there's the impact of what these donors and these families have done for each and every one of these families is going to be really powerful.
So, this is such an important message, but and actually my question is probably gonna ask you to just repeat what you just said, but why should people adopt?
Yeah, I think people should adopt if they feel like they must. I don't recommend adoption to people. Adoption, in fact, at its core, is a solution to pain and heartbreak, and something has happened to need adoption to be necessary. And so I'm not out here saying there's people who want to adopt. What I can do, I know there's two things. There's people who would consider adoption and they're like, okay, yeah, maybe it's for me, maybe it's not for me. That person should go on adopttogether.org, find a family, and get behind them and resource them. They should just pick one. The beauty of adoption, the beauty of family, the beauty of of the power of all of us is that you don't have to be the one to do it. You just have to get behind the one who's doing it and push. And on the flip side, there are those listening to your podcast who they know they were on this planet, and they know that there's a child out there. There's a precondition of a heart racing beat where they go, I know I'm supposed to adopt. Not whether it's spiritual, or it's just destiny, or it's the universe, or whatever language they use. They are want to adopt. I want those people to come to us so I can find donors to support them so that they can have the resources to bring a child into their family. Because there are kids who there are more children in need of stable families than we have families available, uh, with their hands in the air to say, I'm ready to expand, I'm ready to grow. And COVID only made it worse.
Made it
Uh,
worse, yep.
COVID only created more economic hardship for families that cannot create stable environments for their children, and they need to create solutions. It only made it worse for people who got concerned. I just don't think we could afford to adopt. Only made it worse for people who were in unstable environments, and now they don't go to school every day and have a teacher who looks at them and says, something happened to your body. There,
Yeah. Yeah.
you had abusive households where a child would have been removed because social services would have been called, and we stuck them home for a year, and it's not safe for them.
And there was no mandated reporting
Nothing.
and right, and those kids were not being helped, yep.
Nothing. So
Yeah.
so I think when you ask the question, why should people adopt? I think uh, hopefully the question is a whole lot of people going, how do I? And I want to be the guy who answers the how do I question, and the where do I, and how do we get that resource. I want to be that guy who raises my hand and says, I got a whole lot of people. We've spent the last 10 years building an army of people ready to help families who want to adopt, because they know that, if you talk to people who have been through adoption processes, or you talk to families who have adopted, it is not a journey you can go on alone. And
No,
it's
it's
not a
not easy.
journey
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a journey that stops when your child gets home.
Mm-hmm.
You are always an adoptive parent. You are always in the process. Adult adoptees who are listening to your podcast and have been guests on your podcast, I'm sure adult
Yes.
adoptees will say it. It doesn't go away when you come home, and now we're one big happy unit. It is always a part of your story and always a texture of your life. That doesn't ever go away. And adult adoptees have a very diverse list of experiences and descriptions. And I've been fortunate to have so many adult adoptees reach out to me and say, and point out to me when I've oversimplified the adoption narrative. They've pointed out to me when I've underemphasized the pain and the trauma that can occur for an adopted child to wake up and find out at 6 or 8 or 9 or 10 years old that they're adopted. So I never intend to do that at all. I feel like a fireman running into a burning building, and I forget my manners sometimes. And so I'm so grateful when adult adoptees reach out and help me correct that narrative.
Yeah, it's a huge learning curve for me as well. I've always worked with kids in arts organization. I used to say at-risk kids. I never say that anymore. It's a term I don't want to even have in my brain. And about 5 years ago, I started volunteering at Peace for Kids, which serves the Watts Willowbrook community.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's a fantastic organization. It's been there for over 20 years. And I started volunteering there with my boyfriend, and I heard the word casa, 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 casa. I thought, what's a casa? As soon as I found out about it, that's me. I'm doing it. That's me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I tried to talk my boyfriend into doing it with me, and he said, "No, I would kill someone." So I was like, "Okay, well,
He should
then it's
not adopt. Let's take
he
him
should
off
not
that
adopt
list.
me." No,
He
he
can
shouldn't.
he can make a donation to a family, I say.
Yeah, he's very unnerved by the fact that there are people that hurt children, and he can't stomach it. So, but he does a lot of really good in many, many other ways. So I became a CASA, and I knew right away it was just the right thing for me.
Hmm.
But it's also been a huge learning experience to figure out even how to talk to kids, how to talk to caregivers, how to talk to kids who are adopted. And even on this podcast, kids that have been adopted unsuccessfully, unfortunately,
Hmm.
because just because you get adopted doesn't mean it works out perfectly.
That's right.
You know, there's always a lot of play, just like in any family.
Yeah, just because you're born biologically doesn't mean that you're born into the right family either.
No,
You know,
no.
I we used to play a game because there's so many. Adoption had such a negative brand.
Yep.
Call it a brand. Adoption had a negative connotation when I was in high school, and we'd hear all these stories about, oh, that this kid was adopted and this kid was adopted, and in a lot of ways, the way that the adoption narrative was handled inside that family created a lot of trauma. There was a lot of trauma undealt with. And so we used to point out biological kids who were a hot mess and be like, you know,
Mhm.
you know,
Yep.
and we would
Mhm.
just point it and be like, just to be clear, in defense in many ways of people who go through things, a lot of times I think people would just go through adolescence, or they would go through things and they go through trauma, and it was tagged as, oh, it's because they're adopted. It's not because they're adopted, it's because they went through trauma.
Yes.
They're adopted because they went through trauma. They're not, uh, that trauma is not yielding itself because they're adopted. It's the other way around. And so we've always felt very defensive on behalf of adoptees that they didn't deserve the brand or the connotation that I think got handed down to them during that period.
And I wanna ask you about something you've said that you know firsthand how painful and also euphoric adopting a child can be. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, I think adoption, the pain is hopefully obvious to people, and then at the same time, I started World Adoption Day with a group of my friends, and we invited people to put a smiley face on their hand and celebrate adoption. So you put a smile on your hand, and the smile on the hand represented a multitude of things.
You
One of
started
which,
that?
yeah,
Wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, it's
I've
great.
s
It's
I've
in my
seen that.
Instagram bio, Jane. It's in my
Okay,
Instagram
I'm
bio.
sorry. I'm not I
I'm
don't
kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm
So we started World Adoption Day in 2014 because I found out there wasn't one. We wanted to throw our first gala, and my friend had a charity that helped dig water wells. So he did his gala around like World Water Day. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to do mine around World Adoption Day. Well, there was no such thing as World Adoption Day. So we started it, got the domain, got a smiley face, asked celebrities and all sorts of people to put the smile on their hand to celebrate those people whose lives were touched by adoption. Now, in no way did we intend to minimize the trauma that occurs during adoption by any means. However, there is a euphoric thing that happens. Just like there's an ebb and a flow, a yin and a yang, a darkness and light, there's a bright light to my little brothers. There's a bright light to my little sisters. There's a bright light to thousands and thousands of families who, of course, deal with trauma and, of course, have dealt with adult adoptees who deal with tons of pain. And that trauma is what began the journey. We're not here to like solve a problem that didn't exist. That problem is obvious and it's in front of our eyes and it's everywhere societally. And adoption as a solution, adoption as an opportunity to bring a family together and give a child stability is not in any way meant to bring about some euphoric whitewashing or euphoric icing over the pain of what occurred, but only to bring hopefully a lifeline of love and stability to a child that would otherwise have a more chaotic or painful upbringing. And to me, the euphoria is what it was like when my little brother was born and I was in the hospital when he was born and when his birth mother handed him to my mother. And I was at all the visits when we would go all the time. And when she would come and visit, she was my age and she was like my other sister. We didn't treat her differently. We didn't relate to her differently. And there was a beauty and a euphoria to that. That was all love. We love everybody, including my only children friends. How what a boring summers they had, just being kids. And here we were navigating the intricacies and the realities of trauma and life and uncertainty and doing our best to bring stability to that.
Yeah, my little Casa kid, she just got adopted,
Oh, wow. Amazing.
and yeah, after, unfortunately, because of COVID, everything got slowed down, but she just last week or so, we got the news, it's official,
Amazing.
everything's in, and there's big euphoria
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
house,
And again, those are
and
moments just like there's this clip going around the internet right now of Robert De Niro and Tom Hanks talking about how this too shall pass. Things are going great right now. This will pass. Stay calm. Things are going
mhm,
terrible right now.
yep,
This will pass. Stay calm.
let it pass.
And so I don't
Yep,
mean to
yep.
oversimplify. I just mean to say that oftentimes the trauma of adoption is evident every single day and is there no matter whether we look for it or not. It comes up. The trauma of losing my brothers and sisters and having them taken forcefully out of my house comes up out of nowhere in random times, like watching a movie called Man on Fire with Denzel Washington.
One of my favorite movies
One of the
ever.
best, his hands down his best movie, maybe tied with
Yeah,
Training Day. But you watch that, that had so much triggering connotation to me of what it was like to have someone taken from you,
mhm.
and that comes up for us too. But I wanted one day of World Adoption Day to be the one day we all acknowledge, yeah, there's trauma, but we can still celebrate. Yes, there's pain, but we can still celebrate. We can celebrate the silver lining. We can celebrate the beauty of your Casa Kids household. There's celebration in everything, and no matter what the dark time is. And that's what I wanted to give to every adoptive family who all of us have experienced that trauma. That's not small, that's not ignored. But there's one day where we all need to smile and remember that adoption is what brought many of us together.
Well, I think it elevates it,
Hmm.
and I think it also destigmatizes it.
Hmm.
It makes it an available option and one to celebrate
Absolutely.
instead of so it's not oh, I guess, whatever. No, like, hey, this is happening.
Yeah, and
It happened. This is
my
it.
little brothers and sisters, I wanted them to be proud of being adoption. In the same way that when you go to Jewish school, they make you proud of being Jewish.
Right, right.
Make you like, dude, being Jewish is the best. Yeah, it is. And it's just like and I wanted adopted kids, 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds to be like, man, I'm adopted. And you want to stand strong and stand tall and say, that is who I am. That is my story. That is that should be baseline, that your story is celebrated no matter who or where you come from, no matter what trauma, what pain, what chaos, what you should still celebrate your story because it made you who you are.
You're very charismatic, Hank.
Oh, thank you.
I mean that in the old-fashioned sense as well as in the more contemporary sense.
I don't know if I know the difference.
I don't know if I
What's the old-fashioned way of being charismatic?
uh,
I'm like,
I
I'll be the old-fashioned way.
yeah, I think maybe the old-fashioned way is powerfully persuasive to elevate.
Mm.
Whereas when people talk about charisma, they talk about somebody who's engaging and kind of sexy, and
Oh,
and
okay.
and I think you're both those things. So
Oh,
I mean,
thank you.
it's a
Whew.
terrific, it's a
I can
it's a
be
great
persuasive and engaging. I like that. I like that.
right.
Well, you're
Um,
good at this, Jane. You're fun to. You're a great host. You're very easy to converse with and talk to. These are not always this simple.
oh, hey, thanks. Because I'm like you. I'm struggling with it. I had this dream last year, and it's like I'm doing it, and I'm just winging it. You see my booth. I'm surrounded by pillows.
Amazing.
This is my studio. I have a couple friends that are helping me, and I'm just making it happen because at first it was just about the experience of what's happening in care, and then I realized no, kinship care,
Hmm.
adoption,
Yep.
all the stuff that's related to families and how they come together and fall apart. And I think more people need to know what's happening to kids in this country
Yep.
so that we can all say, maybe I can do something about that.
Yep.
Maybe I can.
Yep.
So I want to ask you a question I ask all my guests,
Oh.
and I want you to try to dig deep for this.
Okay, I'm ready.
And that is, what is the one thing that no one would ever know about you unless you told them? What's one thing about you?
Man, I feel like I have so many. I think I project confidence, and I think maybe even turn either people lean in at my charisma as you described it, or they are it's too abrasive for them, or I'm too intense. All those things, but I think if people didn't know this, they probably wouldn't know that I feel like I have dramatically underachieved, and I have so much more to do and so much more to. I don't know that I'm ever totally at peace. I think I'm totally present, and I think I totally love being alive, and I know the magic of being alive, but I'm also keenly aware of the brevity of life and how much work needs to be done. And I want to get as much out of this life as I can. And I feel like I have barely scratched what I feel like humans or us or we or my life is capable of. And that doesn't mean I'm not grateful for my life or my daughters or everything. It's just I don't think people would know that that's the battle I wrestle with. Is I just have a hard time looking at my life and being like, yeah, all right, we've done it. I look at all of it, like I said, with a sense that there's so much more to do.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, but you're already doing a hell of a lot, Hank.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's a lot of work. I just don't know that. And I know that like psychologically, like I can talk myself probably similar to you. You did stutter, and now through your practice, you don't. And I think for me, the voice I constantly have to quiet is uh, all the things that we can do to keep pressing forward. And that goes for everything. That goes for success, careers, family, kindness, my character, the work of Adopt Together, all of it. I just have this overwhelming sense that like, whew, there is so much, so much, so much more to do.
wow, well, I think you're going to do it, Hank.
Hope so. Thank you. I received that, Jane.
I'm,
I take
I'm
that.
rooting for you,
Yeah.
really. Okay, well, thank you so much for making the time to do this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, really, for having me. And I love when people are in motion.
You put it out in the world.
I just think the world is better when people move.
Yeah, we gotta
You
move. We
got to
gotta
do,
move.
you got to act.
Yep, we gotta move. It's
Yep.
like being a shark, you know?
This guy I really admire in San Francisco said ideas are worthless. Execution is everything. And I think we are right now,
It's the
we are
execution.
living in the expression of your imagination. You had an idea for a podcast, you had the courage to LinkedIn a stranger, and here we are doing this, and people are listening to the extroversion of your imagination. And I root for you, Jane.
Thank
I
you.
do.
All right, you have a good night.
You too.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Jane.
Thank you, Hank, for everything that you do. You've created an incredible support system for kids around the country and around the world. You've made a huge difference for not only those kids, but the families that can adopt them. So thank you. Next week's guest is Maria Harding. She was adopted at birth and then put into foster care by her adoptive mother when she was 11. Join us next week for another incredible story. Thank you, and be well. In case you didn't know, it's World Adoption Day on November 9th. And if you're interested in adoption, you can visit AdoptTogether.org. They'll give you all the information you need. If you see something, say something. If you suspect a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. If you want to know more about becoming a CASA anywhere in the country, go to nationalcasagal.org, and in LA, casala.org. And if you want to know more about becoming a foster parent, check out the National Foster Parent Association at nfponline.org. There's also faithfosterfamilies.org and adoptuskids.org. There's tons of other information online as well, so you can just hunt around. We also want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful original music. You can find her music on Spotify or Instagram at Christina Aposto. And also thank you to Yukon Har for his engineering. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear and you find it as valuable as we do, please rate us and hit subscribe. You can also make a donation at bonusbabies.org. See you next time.